Welcome to the Drip Podcast. Today's guest is a professor at the Whitson Hester School of Nursing at Tennessee Tech University. She received her undergraduate nursing degrees from St. Luke's Nursing School and Cedar Crest College, her MSN from Duke University, and her PhD in nursing research from Vanderbilt University. She is a contributing member of the American Association of Critical Care Nurses and has published numerous papers ranging in topics from sepsis, hemodynamics, early mobility, hand hygiene, and ICU diaries for family support. As a dedicated teacher and respected role model, she has spent many years encouraging and equipping nursing students with the tools they need to care for patients in the acute hospital setting. Please welcome Dr. Sue Piras.
Okay, we're back at the Drip Podcast. I am your co-host, Clayton Grigsby. I have our host here too, Angela Craig. Angela Craig, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Clayton. Thank you so much. How awesome is it that I get to have a podcast with you, Dr. Sue Piras? That seems really formal, but that is your name.
Yes, it is.
So glad you're here. And I have titled this Research and Publishing. Is this even a possibility or just a dream? Because I have invited my awesome friend and colleague. Can I call you Sue on this podcast?
Yes, you can.
Awesome. So Sue is here with me, and just a little bit about our background. You've heard a lot in the introduction just a moment ago, but I just wanted to share with you how she has impacted my life in this realm of publishing and helping me really to have a dream come true. So there you go, Sue. You're my little dream helper. What I will tell you is that as a clinical nurse specialist for an intensive care unit, where I work on occasion. Back in the day when pre-Baxter, when I was full-time there, Sue was faculty and still is faculty of the area college that's right next to our hospital. And we became friends, and we really started working through what could she do to potentially help our hospital. I shouldn't say she almost created that position and came in and presented to high levels of the hospital how she could help work with us to try to help us become, maybe I would say, more scientific in nature, and really encouraged us to do research as well as publish these findings. So she has been integral in that, and how awesome it's been. And so I had a goal of publishing. She had helped others in our department publish, and I was the clinical nurse specialist, so I felt like I needed to kind of be an example there, but it's always been a dream of mine to do that. So we started working probably, Sue, wouldn't you say, maybe about 2 years ago, working on this project.
Right. The idea was born.
Yes, the idea was born. And many times I wondered, is this just a dream, or will it ever become a reality? Well, it did become a reality. And so in the winter edition of AAC and Advanced Critical Care, Sue and I co-authored the Advanced Variables to Optimize Hemodynamic Monitoring. And so I wanted to just mention that because I always wanted this, but I needed a helper. So first and foremost, I would say it's really awesome to have a mentor, to have somebody who's been there, done that, because there were many times I didn't know. Let's just be real, Sue. I didn't know what I was doing. And you did, and you helped lead the way. So we're going to kind of pick your brain, Sue. And I wanted to start first with the question: how would you say, if you want to publish, or this is a dream of yours, how do we get started?
So that's a really good question. And what you can't do is let obstacles get in the way. So it's a persistent work ethic that you just have to keep going. It really starts with an idea. Mm-hmm. So the idea could be an idea for a research article. An idea could be for a quality improvement project on your unit. An idea could be, I just had the most interesting patient I've ever taken care of in my career, and I just want to write this up. And then we would, take it from there. But it really starts with an idea. And, as Angela said, when we started this position as the research liaison, that's what the hospital worked with me. And I'm considered the hospital and the university working together to do research for bedside nurses. It really came because there are bedside nurses who really want to do something, but they aren't trained and they don't have the time. And so we kind of work together, but I would say definitely it starts with an idea and a desire. And then when you have those two things, you just keep at it.
Yeah,
And we kept at it for a year and a half. It was arduous. It was very labor intensive. And
absolutely.
but when you work with somebody, you have to make sure, like, let's be honest, because I had done this before, it could have been really easy for me to just make it my own. But it was important to see Angela succeed in this. So we kept her voice, and her voice is very strong throughout that whole article. So it's kind of just augmenting what was already there and bringing it out in a very, I'm not going to say finessed, but just a readable form that everybody can read.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
as I think back and reflect back, that's really where you helped me the most. I had what I thought was a great idea, but then you had to help me finesse it, is a great word for
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
I tend to talk circularly, if that's a word. I have a lot of words, and you had to really help me with that.
Yeah,
So,
it's not easy. It's
no.
not easy, and when you learn to do it formally, it's called a graded assignment, right?
Yeah.
And you get
Yeah.
feedback from the faculty, but, we didn't have that relationship. We had a peer relationship, so it would have to be, kind of broached as, "So, let me tell you what you do well. Let's talk about our areas for improvement." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Absolutely.
that kinda worked through it very well. Yes.
Yeah. You definitely helped me, and she would make me work. I mean, she did not take the
Mhm,
job over. She would say, "Okay, Angela, this is your responsibility." And
mhm,
we had due dates and timelines. Sometimes I met those, sometimes I didn't. But what you helped me do was really just come behind me and really help with the process. And someone like Sue, who's got a PhD in nursing research, I mean, that is amazing. So this is her area of expertise. And so we really fed off each other. My area of expertise was at the bedside doing these hemodynamic monitoring. And we really helped each other and with our areas of expertise. I thought it was a great matchup, didn't you?
I did, and what you come when you get into nursing faculty, the one thing that you have a very hard time keeping alive is the clinical aspect, because the job is just very demanding, and then as you get further along in the job, it becomes more demanding, and they call it an ivory tower effect, which is you kind of stay in academia so strongly you lose your ties to clinical. And that's what Angela was able to offer me. I could get back into critical care. I could see what's going on. I had a hands-on approach, not actually taking care of patients, but being exposed and seeing. Some of the basics are still the same, but there's definitely, based on the research, some clinical practice best indicators that need to be implemented. And then the challenges for CNS to implement those best practice clinical practice is it's a battle. It's tough. It's
Yeah,
very
it
tough,
really is.
Yeah.
And we did some other fun things too, if we just want to mention those. But you brought in students, and you would do rounds, and we would be able to
Mhm.
talk about some of those concepts that you and I had talked about as we're
Mhm.
publishing. You were able to, in
Exactly.
turn, show the students in real world fashion what these
What the
numbers
whole
meant.
process is.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
and then to always, as I like to do, to bring this back around to patient outcomes. This is
Mhm,
all about, all of this stuff isn't about Angela Craig getting her dream of publishing, but what could I do to help the patient at the bedside, right?
mhm,
And what could you
absolutely.
as faculty do, and as a PhD in research do to help patients at the bedside? I think that's at the core of us, right? And that's what kind of drives us. So if we're able to use that to then in turn help patients, help students to see how we drive patient care. And that's awesome. So we've kind of talked about publishing. We get the idea, you move forward. And there's a lot more to that, and we don't have time to go over every detail, but by all means, feel free to reach out. If anybody's listening, feel free to reach out. And when I think about research, though, would you say research is similar? You kind of alluded to research as well as, maybe a publishing idea. Do you think that's similar to get started as
What,
with
the process
publishing?
of research?
Yes.
Well, publishing is a responsibility of good research. So it's an expected outcome. It's expected. You aren't going to ask a patient, or you're not going to ask nurses, or you're not going to gather data from anyone in this, country without saying, it's so important that I get this information from you by doing this procedure or whatever, that I'm going to keep it to myself. So publication is a responsibility. You would never do research and not disseminate your findings. That's irresponsible. So it's an expected outcome. Be it at, you would never say to a patient, like, I've done a couple of research studies at the hospital we were at, and a lot of them involved interviews, calling people at home for interviews, asking them to do surveys. And I would never do that to somebody without that initial, can I do this, asking permission, and then saying the findings from this study will be disseminated to the population, because we want the population to know, hey, this was good, or hey, this just didn't work. We don't know how it's going to go, but you would never do research without the idea that this has to be either published or disseminated at a conference. It's just an abuse of people's time and your energy. You know what I mean? So, and believe me, the research, I think of one study I did at the hospital. I spent close to 18 months, and I just got 30 patients to be part of a study. It took me a year and a half. So it's not without a lot of work, is what I'm saying. And then it took us another, then you have to collect all the data. Once you collect all that data, then you have to analyze it, and then you have to, the writing up the journal publication. That took about 9 months to do that, with the process of when you submit it initially to a journal, they may accept it or reject it. If they accept it, it usually needs revisions. And you're always very thankful for the people that take their time to read your article and give you feedback, because that is a donation of people's time to the profession. So you're always respectful of their comments, and you revise your article based on their comments, and you have to address each comment and say, this is what I did on page 2, line 10, this is what I did. And then you graciously, acknowledge their contribution to your kind of like a masterpiece. You feel like it is by the time it's done. And then when that revision goes in, you hope that they say accepted, but you might go another round. You might go around 2 or 3 times with revisions and resubmit, and revisions and resubmit. And it's not for the lighthearted, you know what I mean? But it is having been a critical care nurse for 30 years, I'd seen a lot of things come and go. And there are some things I noticed at the bedside, and it was that noticing that took me into my doctoral work, because I'm like, I noticed something and I'm very interested in what I've noticed. And that's what I did my research on, so it usually starts with, for a lack of a better way of saying, kind of like a self-serving, I'm passionate about this. And then when you're passionate about something, that can kind of carry you through the pain in the neck times, as I used to call it. Just a pain sometimes.
So Clayton, I was hoping that you could share a bit about how Baxter has research support. There is something called an IIR that I was hoping you could explain.
Yeah, IIR. Yeah, so that stands for Investigator-Initiated Research. And this is research which an investigator and their institution have complete control over their protocol. They own the data, and the institution acts as a sponsor of the study. Investigators and institutions can submit a protocol for Baxter's review in consideration for funding and our product support. And that can be found on our website. And I believe we're going to be putting a link down in the description. So if you guys are interested in that, please hop on over there, and that can get you started.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize I'm fairly new to Baxter. It's just been almost right at the year mark. And I've been really impressed with how they definitely can help institutions where maybe research is something they're passionate about, but just can't do it at that time on their own. So we can definitely help with that. Also, can we ever help with poster presentations or anything like that?
Yeah, there is publication grant funding, so it might fall underneath that. But basically, it provides support for a publisher, associate fees, which is like, for example, like open access fees, page charges, or other fees assigned by the publisher, for instance. These grants are available for research projects completed with previous Baxter support or funding. So, yeah, so we definitely have some options on the funding page that people can gravitate to.
Awesome. It's just neat to work for a company with a goal of saving and sustaining lives. And we know that research can help to save and sustain lives. And so I think this has been a really great podcast just to talk about that and to be able to review what maybe Baxter could do to help, or also just how you can get involved and step in and jump in and get started on your research dream. Okay, now let's get back to the podcast.
Sue, I think that what you just talked about is so important, and it really kind of pushes us into the next question too. You really brushed on it a little bit, but I want to kind of paint a picture for you here. We have a new researcher, and they, for whatever reason, their publication did not get approved, or their presentation did not get accepted for conference. Kind of paint me back the picture, what your state of mind should be, and maybe the next steps.
Your state of mind should be, it just didn't belong there. It belongs somewhere. And you just gotta go. Some would say shoot for a high impact factor and work your way down. I don't necessarily look at it that way. I look at it as you just got to find where your article belongs. Sometimes you're just in the wrong, journal. And, like when I do any kind of nursing education research, I always shoot for nursing education. I did a research study about nurses' attitudes, and that wound up getting published in the Journal of Nurse Administration, because it was like, this is how you boost the climate and the morale. So it's just a matter of finding where it does belong. But let me be perfectly clear, it's not easy to take. Okay. It's not, it's not like, oh, no big deal. No, because you've put so much work into it, but you never want to give up, because really 92% of the work is done at that point. You just got to find and go to another, conference and see if they'll accept it as an abstract. And sometimes I think, having looked at different abstracts and been an editor, a reviewer, sometimes I think having another person read through it, because I'm telling you, you could think you're crystal clear and it doesn't make sense to somebody else. So having somebody look through your work is really, and they don't have to be like a higher rank or anything like that. They just have to know what you're talking about. And it's like, does this make sense? Sometimes that's a really good thing to do. But I think it's more of a matter of just keep trying and find out where the article does belong, and trying to get broad shoulders. I'm not going to say it's easy.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I recently had put in a couple abstracts for an upcoming conference, and this year both of them got turned down. And there's other years when all of them were accepted. So I usually will reach out to one of my colleagues, because I'll be bummed, because those abstracts take a lot of work to put together. And so I'll usually reach out and first of all, get some consolation. And they'll say, Angela, you never know, right? And the timing probably has to do with that, or maybe the goal of the conference. So I'm like you. Every year I try to push myself to still throw an abstract out there, even though at times I get turned down. Other times I get accepted, and then we're all excited. So I think you bring up some really good feedback about that. And I love your idea that it is our responsibility, if we do research, that we need to disseminate that information. And you spoke very boldly about that. And I love that. I think that is really important.
If you don't look at it that way, you're just putting another, so they say, notch in your belt. And that's not what it's all. It's not about us. Right. It's about the profession, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The profession and the patients. That's right. Yes. Love that. Love that. Well, we are going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Sue, for all your information. And is there any place where if somebody heard this podcast and they might want to reach out to Dr. Sue Piras, is there a place where they could potentially find you an email address?
I work at Tennessee Tech University, and you could find me there, spyris@tntech.edu. I'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sue. Thank you for all you've done for me over the years and for helping us with our first publication. In fact, I just reached out to Sue and shared with her a fabulous clinical story. And I said, you know what? I think we could do a paper on this. She goes, let's do it. Let's do it. So that encouragement encourages me, and her excitement encourages me. So hopefully this has been encouragement to all of you who are listening out there. And we're just so glad to be able to have this time with you, Sue. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sue.
You're welcome.
As we conclude today's episode, I remind our esteemed medical colleagues that the opinions expressed herein are solely intended for professional discussion and should not be construed as medical advice. We encourage all listeners to consult their own healthcare providers for personalized medical guidance.
And hey, just as an extra, I was reading the other day in the newer book, the Vasopressor and Inotrope Handbook by Dr. Eddie Gutierrez. And I'm not endorsing him or anything, but I read this statement in here and I thought it was very appropriate for this podcast. And it was, he in this book was thanking people who work in research. And I was so compelled. I thought, I want to add that because there are so many people out there who don't get the credit they need. And I just want to read this excerpt from his book. It said, I extend my deepest gratitude to everyone whose work is cited. Your contribution to the families of patients who participated in these clinical trials is invaluable. I offer my heartfelt thanks to the unsung heroes on the research teams, often working tirelessly behind the scenes without public acknowledgement. Thank you to the bedside nurses and pharmacists who meticulously prepare and administer these critical medications. Your role is vital in the seamless execution of these studies and our daily management of patients. I think so often we don't have the opportunity or take the opportunity to really thank everyone who is involved in nursing research, or not even nursing research, but medical research. And it is so important and so imperative to our care at the bedside. So thank you to all who help with research.